Hello friends. The new season of Project Diablo 2, Season 11 is upon us, and I wanted to give an overview for any new players joining this excellent game on how to utilize the trade site, as well as how to identify items of value and basic outlines of strategies to farm and make early currency and trade. I know a lot of people from my community are not only new to Project Diablo 2, but to Diablo 2 in general, and aren't familiar with a lot of the staple items or the things that have changed, so I wanted to at least provide a little bit of information for everyone to go off of. I think this is shaping up to be their biggest season yet, and I'd hate to think so many people are lost as to how to approach trade. The usual disclaimer here that I'm not an expert. I'm just a cat. Take what I say as a guideline rather than definitive truth, and always listen to the opinions of those you trust who are very experienced. I play this game very seasonally, so my expertise is limited to those short durations of 2 to 4 weeks of play. However, I do trade quite often, I play hundreds of hours, and I usually end up banking an impressive amount of currency early and into the late game, and always end up with an extremely expensive and powerful build. Like all ARPGs, Project Diablo 2 is very much a game that rewards you for the more time you spend in it. More time equals more loot, but how you approach getting that loot can change your acquisition rate greatly. So today we'll go over how to use the trade site, as well as some farming strategies to use endgame and early game for all builds, as well as some tips from my personal experience on what items have value early and if you're newer to trade. I've sectioned the videos so you can skip around depending on what you do know, don't know, or want to know, or whatever you might be interested in. So let's start with the trade site. You can get to the trade site by logging into your account on the Project Diablo 2 website and clicking on the trade button up top here. The trade interface is pretty easy to use, but let's go through it quickly and show how to utilize it. So first off, let's go through the search options. Properties allows you to search for pretty much any different affix in the game. So I can go for cannot be frozen, I can go for all skills, I can go for fire skills, I can go for mana after each kill. Any property that exists in the game, you can search here. This is mostly useful if you're looking for a very specific rare item, or especially a unique with a corruption on it that you want or need, or if you're trying to price check one. Next up, you have the actual name function. The name function allows you to search for pretty much anything you want. Let's go ahead and look at an old staple, which is like Harlequin Crest. This can search items as well as runes, as well as other consumables or things that you would find in your currency tab. So we'll search Harlequin Crest and you'll see it all pops up. We'll come back to this page later. So next up, we have the price section. The price section is useful if you want to look for something that is priced at a specific rune. So we just saw Harlequin Crest and we saw one was listed at a Vex. So if I were to search this and were to search price under Vex, I'm only going to see the one price for that. So if you're looking for things like maybe skillers that are priced only for maybe a mal or a pull or even up to an or very specifically priced things, maybe a Vex is what you're looking for, you can search by price only so you're not seeing things above that. Though this will limit things under that as well, so it's not great if you want to maybe try to get things on the cheap too. But if everything is priced over a certain amount, this is a good tool to use. Next up, we have type and base. This is pretty nice. You can go in here and look at armor and say, I want a specific base of armor. Well, you have every single option. This little option is true for pretty much every item in the game. Charms, you can search the different sizes of charms. Pretty much everything in here can be searched as far as the type and base. Next up, you've got rarity, normal, superior, magic, rare, crafted, set, unique, and rune word. This allows you to pretty much search for any of these. Ethereal, so you can tag if it's ethereal or not. Corrupted or not. This way you can guarantee if you're getting clean items or if you're okay with looking at corrupted items, which usually end up being cheaper if the corruption wasn't something really GG. Desecrated, which is very specific to the amulets double corrupted by the Lucian Shrine. And then sockets. You can set a minimum or maximum sockets. You have identified and unidentified if you want to go for a big gamble. And then one of my favorites down here, which is the user online in the site or in-game. When you search an item, you'll actually be able to see if the user is currently online in-game or on the site based on the visibility of icons. This way you can filter if you want people that you can immediately message in-game or people that are at least on the site to message. And we'll go over this process in a bit. We also have the ability to filter how things are sorted. You can go by things that are last bumped or by things in price based on HR value. You can also look at the sorting order of descending or ascending. You have modes, so you can pick softcore or hardcore, ladder or non-ladder. And we also have the requirement section. You can look up level, strength, dexterity. This way, if you're searching early items or items that can fit your character, this is a little easier. So now that we've gone through a lot of that, let's go back to the search function and what it looks like when you search. Like I said, we're going to look at the Harlequin Crest. It's a staple old item of Diablo 2. Most people are familiar with it, and if you're not, it's a pretty decent item. It's not the most expensive in the world, but early on, it's extremely nice, given its all skills, its physical damage reduction, its magic find, and its life and mana gain. Also, it makes your whole head green. So here we see this is in descending order of when this was put up, and some of these are corrupted and some are not. So now there's only 3 on the market, and that's just due to the fact that this is literally the end of the season right before the next one. Let's go ahead and look at how this is laid out. Now there's compact mode up here. What this does is when you click it, it removes the image as well well as any non-variable stats. What I mean by non-variable stats is any stats that don't have a roll range. So when you look at this, you can see the all skills, attributes, and life, and mana, which are based on character level, and all of these are just static to the item, disappear, as well as the image of the item. All you see is the things with roll ranges and any corruptions that add additional stats. This is an easier way to sort through things if you want a more compact view and you're looking through dozens of items. Now what we can look at here is a few symbols. Now you can see this says user offline. If the user was online, this would be blue and lit up, and when you click it, you would get a message saying that you can now right-click your chat in-game to copy a message to them. It's very easy. And the message will be automated saying that you're interested in the item. You can even add stuff to the message as well, as it won't auto-send in case you're trying to give a different offer or talk a bit about what you can offer for it. Over here, you have the ability to share the link if you want to share it to your friends if maybe they're looking for the item. You have the ability to favorite it so you can come back and look at it later if you think it's going to be listed or you don't have the money right now. And you have the ability to start a chat, which actually opens a chat in the website sending the same message that you would send in-game, though this one lists the actual market listing, allowing them a way to view it. I personally suggest always messaging people in-game before you resort to doing this on the website. There's also the offer button that allows you to put in an offer, which pops up as a notification for them. But I still think the chat is better than this, as it's easier to communicate and feels a little more personal. But that is just a personal preference. So that's pretty much the entirety of how you search for, message people for items. And like I said, you can kind of search for different things. If I wanted to view only corrupted or only clean, I could filter by this, and this would allow me to see only corrupted ones if I want maybe a cheaper one. But if I want one that's fully clean, I could look at it like this. Keep in mind, corrupted items can't be modified, so sometimes having a clean one is really good if you want to do something like try to add a socket or anything like that. Or maybe you want to corrupt it yourself just for fun. Next up, we'll look at the create section. I don't really have a lot of items here right now since I just have characters I've been practicing with on and off and deleting them and redoing them. But what we'll look at is just the basics of pricing an item. So let's say you want to list an item. Well, you put it somewhere in your stash. It doesn't really matter where. I believe it can be even in the personal space. I just threw up some set boots here. The Hasaru's Iron Heel. So what we're going to do is you just click on the item, and you can also find similar. This is a really great feature that a lot of trade sites don't have. This allows you to search for the item. This will immediately go and list different options for this item. As you can see, I had listed it originally, so there's me. But it would look for that item. It would look for all stats on it, things like identified, its rarity, if it's ethereal or corrupted or not, and the item name. You can also copy a lot of properties if you need to, and then you can kind of edit it to search down. If you're trying to price an item, this is a very good tool. Now, as for listing it, there's this button here to create trade. You click this, and then you just set what you want. Where it says HRs, you can just put a value here, but most people use this, which I'm going to say 1 Worldstone Shard. Nobody's probably going to buy something like this for 1 Worldstone Shard because these boots are extremely common, but I'm just giving an example. So then you just put that and you hit submit. And now when I go and search the item, we can see that it is listed for 1 Worldstone Shard. And you can see that I'm online and I can be messaged in game. So you could click that and it'll pop up with this message. Now we've covered the basics of searching for items as well as listing items. So here we have exchange. Exchange allows you to exchange one item for another. You have things like Uber ingredients that you can exchange one for another. A lot of what I personally use the exchange for is looking at the values of runes. So what I'll do here is I'll actually just search up a Zod rune. This is, like I said, very late in the season, so there's not a lot of things listed correctly. And I don't know if it's pulling from ladder or non-ladder at the moment for the open beta, but I know a Zod rune is in here, so we'll look up Zod. And you can see, okay, what you get is a Zod, what you pay is a burr. There are many things that can be checked here, and this is a good way to check prices or just kind of look for different exchange. People will exchange maps for other maps if there are immunities they can't do. Uber ingredients are another option. Gold can also be put in here as an exchange for other things. Sometimes people will be looking to either get gold by trading an item for it or paying gold for items. Things such as gems, orbs, and even a lot of miscellaneous items. Worldstone shards are in here as well, as is crafting items, even forward shoes. Sometimes people are buying those. Never underestimate what people are willing to pay for so they don't have to farm it themselves. There's always options in here for bubblegum currency and incremental gains. Next up is the services tab. You'll see this much fuller when the season starts, but this is usually where people sell services. The most common ones early are rushing services from sorceresses or other fast classes. They'll be offering a rush, sometimes for a flat fee, or sometimes you just pay your Hellforge quest to them, which means that once they get you to Hell, and especially into Act 4, or through the rest of it, they go and they do the Hellforge quest with you, and they get all the gems and runes that come out of it in Hell. Mostly because this gives you extremely valuable and sometimes high-tier runes, or at least early on can be decent high-tier runes for currency, and it doesn't take people very long. This is another form of currency you could make if you're playing a sorceress and familiar with rushing people. We have the Manage tab, which allows you to view all of the items you currently have listed, as well as a couple options. One is to obviously just remove the listing entirely. The other is the Find Similar button. You do have the Modify Price if I want to go in at any point and change the price. And then you do have the Bump button, which allows you to bump the item if you want to list it to the top again. So if I hit this and I were to swap back and forth, it's going to show that I just posted this item. This allows you to keep up on your items, reprice them if it's been too long, and then bump them, kind of keeping an idea of moving them. You want to make sure your items are always moving, and honestly, if it's been 12 hours and something hasn't sold, I'd drop the price and bump it. There's no reason to just keep items hanging there unless they're of extreme and high value. Especially early on when prices are fluctuating and changing rapidly. We have the offers tab, where if somebody's used the offer button on one of your items, you can see your incoming or your outgoing if you've used it as well. That way you can see responses or how many you have. Favorites, where if you favorited any items. Filters, and the archive. The archive allows you to see things that had been traded originally and what price they probably traded for or originally listed. We can look at Harlequin Crest again, but you can see a historical record of items and what they sold for. If you're looking for something specific, the archive is actually not a bad place to look. It actually takes you to current and archived when you hit show similar on one of your items. This allows you to view historical prices and not just what's currently listed, but it does both. As current market value isn't always correct because the actual value could have been bought out completely and what's left is only things that are overpriced. Let's talk about trade etiquette. Let's review how most trades go. You or another person whispers with the offer for an item, you or that person accepts the offer, and one of you, usually the seller, will give the game name and password, unless the seller asks for a game name and password, that is. You'll meet up in-game in an act, drop the items on the ground, you each grab your new item, say thank you, good luck, and that's the trade. And let's go over just the general etiquette and some tips. Try to list your trades reasonably and even at times below market value if you have to, especially if you see those on market value have been sitting or not moving for hours. This keeps your currency flowing and the economy moving. Try to list as many items as you can as often as you can and keep them updated. Make sure you drop price after a few hours if you are actively playing and it's not a crazy high value item and just not moving. Money now is better than no money ever. It's totally fine to offer different amounts or bargain with players, adding in things of value like other runes or worldstone shards. And when doing that, you also need to be okay with them denying that and saying no if it's not what they want. PD2 still has many heavy bartering environments involving the currency, and understanding that is key. Please don't lowball people or ever be rude to them regardless of their prices or reasoning. Don't put undue pressure on others to sell or buy things for what your opinion of the item value is. That's just not okay. I'm not a big believer in pushing heavy real-world sales tactics on people in a video game. On that note, it's always good to sell items and accept trades slightly below market value, as it makes others happy and keeps you flush with currency, especially early on when you can turn around and trade that currency for instant power. Make sure you're price checking your items, especially in the archive section of the trade site, so you know historical data. The Find Similar button is great for this with items in your stash. Make sure you know rune values. I have a handy chart here, but keep in mind season start values are different. There's an Excel sheet kept up by somebody in the community I've linked in the description of this video, though it's not updated constantly, but if you don't know rune prices, always feel free to ask others or pop in and ask in my stream or my community. Drop trading is how it's done in PD2. You'll need to get comfortable with this and not waste others' time or make it awkward feeling like you're not trusting. If it's a very high value trade of a very expensive item, feel free to record it with recording software just in case. The community here is incredible and I've never been scammed in years of drop trading, but there's always a bad actor somewhere. Rest assured, with proper logs and proof, the mod team takes it very seriously and handles it. Some things to avoid, and my biggest pet peeve is a listing that says offer and only that. What you should do instead of offer is list it for what you believe it's worth or a decent value based on historical data, or ask a friend or the community, and add next to it OBO, meaning or best offer. This allows a set price point people understand as far as your expectation, as well as an open invitation to give their own price ideas and suggestions on what they think it's worth. This says to people that you're willing to negotiate. Don't try trading items for other items. 90% of the time, this is too much effort for others. We have so many options for currency in PD2, there's no reason to put a burden of looking up the value of one item versus another on another trader. I don't suggest doing this. I understand if two uniques are similar in value in high runes, but you're trying to trade items for items rather than the currency they're asking for. Some people may be open to this, but not everyone is. Don't be greedy. Greed is only going to hurt you in the end. Like I said earlier, taking 9 worldstone shards instead of 10 for an item isn't going to shatter your bank and render you poor, so be willing to accept lower trades. And I touched on this before, but be kind, be accepting, don't be rude. If anyone becomes hostile or extensively toxic to you over trading of all things in this game, I highly suggest putting them on ignore or even going as far as reporting them depending on the severity. There's no room for that kind of attitude in what I consider a very tight-knit and fine community. Let's talk about how we make this currency. There's actually more than a few methods to make money in PD2, and all of them, of course, are affected by a bit of RNG as well as the timeline of the economy. What I mean by timeline is that certain things either go up and down in value from the first few days and the second week. I'll give some examples as we go through this. The first method for making money is the simplest. Just kill monsters and do maps. Mapping is the ideal endgame activity for getting currency, because as you roll your maps to magic or rare or even corrupt them, they gain additional inherent magic find on the map. This is added directly to your character when you go into the map itself. It's just free magic find and makes it so that builds that are early or a little too weak to use high MF gear can still function. It also means you can put a little more focus on blasting than just magic find. This is the most basic and simplest way to make currency. Slam your maps, kill everything as fast as possible, and remember, the more you kill, the faster, the better. Loot things of value while praying for RNG rune drops, and then list valuable things on the trade site. The main downside of this is the knowledge required, know what's valuable. There's the obvious things like high runes, which are the currency you're farming to stack up anyway. However, there's also things you'll learn that have obvious instant value like puzzle boxes or boss parts, or even more niche things like scarabs, which will probably go up a bit this season. We'll cover a bit of what's considered valuable in the value and tip section. Next method would be key farming and or boss farming. One thing you can do with a fast enough character, preferably a sorceress as teleport is the fastest in the game, is farm the key drop monsters. Key of Terror, Hate, and Destruction are used to summon the mini Ubers, which drop organs to get into Uber Tristram. These keys can be easily farmed by someone fast with enough damage to quickly kill these mini bosses. In PD2, these have more than one drop location. Terror drops from Countess and Bloodraven, Hate drops from Summoner and Bloodwitch, Destruction drops from Nithalak and Iswal. Farming these keys and selling them in what's known as a 3x3 can be very valuable. A 3x3 is 3 of each key. This is usually the preferred method because then you can open all 3 portals in one game and kill all 3 mini bosses to get 3 separate organs. It's also easier to bundle by price this way. Alternatively to just selling them, if you want to push up that value a bit and your build is capable of it, you could just take those keys and do Uber Tristram yourself. Uber Tristram drops both a Hellfire Torch and usually a Black Soulstone. Hellfire Torch value is very high early and fluctuates depending on the meta. This season most likely Assassin Torches will be the most valuable as it's likely to be the most played class. But all of them, especially with good resistance rolls in the first week, are valuable. There's also now added value considering the demonic cube item can reroll them entirely, including the class's skills. The Black Soulstone can also be sold for profit, roughly worth a Vex or more early on, as it's one of the 3 items needed for Diablo clone, which is where a Nihilist drops. So getting even deeper down this rabbit hole, if you are a build capable of doing all 3 of these things, this is another boss you could kill. Take the Black Soulstone from Uber Tristram, pure demonic essence from map bosses, and a primeval soul from Mephisto, Diablo, or Baal on Hell difficulty, and create a Vision of Terror. This lets you fight Diablo clone on difficulty 0, and it gets you an Annihilus if you kill him. Another extremely valuable item depending on rolls, especially big early since it's all res, +1 skills, and extra EXP. There's always a revenue stream in boss killing, especially early. If you're good at it and geared for it and have an easy source of materials, you can go from one step to the other or just stop at any time to sell all the mats and items you've gotten. All are lucrative, especially early. Now let's look at some other methods that are a little on the lower end. These are options that aren't as strictly endgame as the previous 2. Nightmare Cows is something people sleep on a little too much. It's a good place to start if your build still needs some gear. There's nothing wrong with some good old Nightmare Cows. A lot of good bases and items can drop here for you to sell and incrementally gain currency, and they can even drop good gear for you to wear, especially skill charms. Nightmare Cows are very valuable, and a lot of people skip over it, but they really shouldn't, especially with how fast you can kill them the higher level you get. Never hesitate to farm this method if you're newer and need currency. There's level 85 zones. Just find one on the list on the wiki that doesn't have immunities of your ability type and go blast. Being in such a high level area gives you good EXP and good drops. Targeting corrupted zones is another good way to farm, though just double check their immunities if you can, as these zones drop tons of Worldstone shards, which are baseline currency and allow you to slowly purchase up for other things. Arcane Sanctuary farming is another one many players prefer, especially lightning builds early on. The ghosts in here have higher drop rates of charms, jewels, and most importantly runes. It's a lower level area than other areas in Hell, so the difficulty isn't as high, and there's no lightning immunes native to the zone, so you can just blast. And the bonus here is Summoner can drop a Key of Hate. There's also the tried and true Act Boss farming. Nightmare Mephisto and Andy early on are good farms, as well as their Hell variants, and if you can navigate it fast or are a teleporter familiar with the layouts, it's super easy. Speaking of Hell counterparts, can't sleep on Chaos Sanctuary, especially strong for magic damage or physical builds. Chaos Sanctuary is one of the best zones possible to farm given the high density of champion packs and the guaranteed ones from the sigils. And Diablo himself, who offers a boss loot tables and primeval soul. I will note here that in Chaos Sanctuary, if you pop all the sigils, things that are still alive will just disappear and not drop loot, so it is good to clear the zone if you want loot from everything in there, but you can do it however you prefer. For those of you that like gold farming is actually a pretty viable strat. Diablo 2 offers plenty of items that increase gold from monsters, and a lot of people wear these and blast Travencel. Since the Council are abundant with golden items, you can farm an obscene amount of gold quickly with high gold find gear. This gold can be used to barter or buy things of lower value, get materials for rolling your maps, or the next section, which is gambling and or crafting. You can use all that gold you have to gamble in Act 5. There's a refresh button on gamblers letting you target specific items. I personally suggest circlets and amulets. Circlets and amulets can roll plus all skills or plus skill type for many classes, and can roll with very solid affixes alongside that, the higher level you are. A +3 trap necklace early is worth good money, or any +3 early for a class that would use it. Pretty much every sorceress build in the game or necro build will use these. It's a good way to gamble yourself some money. On top of gambling is crafting. Using the crafting guide linked on the wiki for what crafts exist and how to use them, you can craft on these items. Didn't get a good circular amulet on your gamble? You can craft on them to try to get something that's good. Make those chances a little higher. Though it's suggested to craft at a higher level since the formula is your character level and the item level combined. As shown on the formula on the wiki, 92 is usually the good rule of thumb for doing this, but you'll most likely just be looking to do this a little earlier, but the crafts can still be really good value. I always suggest looking for ones with faster cast rate and skills. Now let's talk about the section most people who are newer will be looking for, and I'll do my best here as I'm not an expert, but I do love trade and pretty familiar with it for most seasons I start, and I'll be doing an excessive amount of trading live on stream during the launch. Value of items and how to make currency. Let's talk about item value and how to understand it. I will say one thing is to pick a filter suited to you. I use the Christ Shard filter for most seasons, and I find it exceptional for early and endgame, as it tends to show valuable items and highlights which ones are good or rare. It also highlights bases or items with plus to specific class skills, which we'll talk about later. But choose what's best for you. This is just my suggestion, which I give with much praise to the filter creator creator himself. And let's touch on a few basic easy items at first. Runes are simple and straightforward outside of the super high ones that fluctuate. Keys and boss materials are usually pretty static and easy to make money with. Things like Token of Absolution or the essences that drop from bosses are usually pretty static and be sold for a small gain in parts. Gems themselves can be sold at a perfect level and offered as a barter, but usually this is a full stack, if not multiple full stacks, to be of any value, so they are worth keeping. Usefulness of perfect gems does vary, but the one people focus on the most besides just crafting is item level 91 plus grand charms can be re-rolled in the cube using perfect gems. This is a great way to roll into a skiller that you can then sell for profit. Things like puzzle boxes, demonic cubes will always have high value, and rare but great items like the Almanac and Navigator, which are infinite use TP or ID scroll tomes, are big money. Even stacking up tons of full rejuves and selling them to other players is possible and easier than ever with the rejuve tab in the currency tab. Plenty of serial bossers will be willing to buy tabs of rejuves. Worldstone shards are going to be brought up a lot and have been, but they are a very good standard currency and almost never lose at least a base value that bartered or traded with. These are your bread and butter early, especially for lower tier items, skillers, bases, and it's always worth listing items with them as an option to build up your stock. I always try to keep at least 30 to 50 on me at all times, even when I'm not directly trying to trade for them, as I like to slam items and maps constantly when I'm late game. Charms are an easier thing to describe as far as value, and most of them will be highlighted on filter. You should pretty much always pick up an ID every charm, especially early on. Trust me. Your first base value items that are good are skillers. Easy to identify and depending on the class, very valuable, especially early. Meta will define what these are worth, and some can go for as low as a pull or a week in, but some maintain Gull or Vex or even depending on rolls. Really good rolls can reach multiple high runes. These can roll with other valuable stats, and ones you want to look out for are flat life, faster hit recovery, faster run walk, though even things like stats can add value to these beyond their base. Price check these for sure when you get them. Other than that, Grand Charm's value are all resistances early or extremely high single resistances, especially fire or lightning. All res with life is big money. Max damage is another good one for physical builds. Even better or more valuable the higher roll and if it has attack rating in life. Large charms have good options too, like max damage, attack rating in life, but also have options for percent skill damage. Fire, lightning, cold, magic, and poison up to 3%, as well as potentially another stat rolled on it. These at 3% with life or faster hit recovery are very valuable. Don't sleep on these when you get them. And once again, the value of each element is affected by meta. So if the season is heavy meta towards lightning, lightning charms are worth more. Small charms are next, and their value can also be high. All res is big here because the charms are so small, and all res in life is huge. Max damage AR in life can also exist on these and is worth big money as well. Price shard filter will help you identify all of these by putting special text on them. Next, let's talk about bases. When we talk about bases, I'm mostly referring to ones used for rune words, as ones for endgame crafting are a little more complex and mostly used for physical bases, though a lot of the high value ones could be highlighted by your filter. Rune word bases can be hard to know the value of if you're newer and not experienced, and the value of these depends on the season timeline, but early all of them will have decent to high value, and variance depends on other factors like rolling with enhanced defense or damage. Understanding what rune word bases are valuable is also knowing what classes want what rune words, and it's a lot of learning and studying to figure this out. Filters are good, but only go so far, so let me go over a few general ideas of what's valuable and to look out for, and do your own research as well to help you out, as some of these items can be good early worldstone shards or even runes to begin building up your currency. 4 open socket monarchs are very good early. Spirit is a very popular, very useful early rune word for a lot of people used in these. On the higher end are things like Phoenix and Exile. Monarchs with enhanced defense and 4 sockets are worth even more. On the note of 4 socket shields, Paladin shields with 4 sockets and all resist can be valuable. Paladin shields can roll all res naturally on them, so a shield with 20 plus all res and 4 sockets is big for a paladin, especially early. Even 3 socket shields of these types have value. 5 socket flails or maces or swords can be sold for people looking to make call to arms, a staple of almost every build in the game that isn't a shout barb. Also good to keep in mind for call to arms, people want the lowest dex and strength requirement item possible. 4 socket swords, especially a crystal sword, early on due to its low requirements and use of spirit. 3 socket ethereal high tier helmets can be used for ferocity late game. 3 open socket light plates like Archon or Mage Plate, or dust shrouds, especially with enhanced defense. 4 socket armors as well. These aren't worth an insane amount, but are good small incremental currency, especially early on. Even 6 socket swords can be good for gold find with 6 lems in them, so keep those in mind. Other than the very base item, let's go with the plus skills. There are certain classes and builds that will use a rune word at endgame, so finding the base that class uses with plus to their relevant skills can be extremely valuable. A good example of this would be a 4 socket staff with plus to Nova or plus to Nova and Lightning Mastery being insanely valuable, as some lightning sorks wear Infinity themselves, so this would be a huge boost. Just that I can think of to list off, a dagger with plus 3 poison and 3 open sockets is valuable for the plague or venom rune words. A 2 socket wand with 3 golem skills or 3 golem mastery or both can be turned into dominion for a golem necro and is extremely valuable. 4 socket staves with plus to energy shield, as some sorks use this as a memory rune word for extra energy shield, or 5 socket staves with cold skills for the doom rune word. Other notable things to look out for is scepters for paladins that have things like plus to holy bolt or fist of heavens, or even cast rate, as well as items for necromancers like cast rate plus necro skills, plus teeth, especially open 2 socket ones with plus teeth or bone spear. Necro specific shields can also have skills on them that they like teeth and bone spear as well, and can have 2 open sockets for rune words like splendor. Looking at mercenary rune words, a good first one to look for is a 4-socket Colossus Spear or any 4-socket Ethereal Spear early on. Mercenary weapons and gear is ideally ethereal as it grants more damage, higher defense, and lower requirements, and durability isn't harmed on mercenaries. Keep that in mind when looking for any gear for your mercenary, as ethereal is a possibility. When you look for these bases, make sure to price check them before listing them, and early on these are a fantastic source of incremental currency through worldstone shards and lower runes. List them up as soon as you get them and be ready for a trade message. Something that I didn't touch on too much is to check vendors regularly, especially for things like wands and staves. You can find open socket weapons and items like this on the vendors. You can even find ones that are +2 to all skills of a class with some off skills as well. And these could be worth big money. You just have to have the gold to purchase them. Vendor shopping is a legitimate way to make money and is another good source of it, though it's a quick way to go insane. Then there's the more obvious things like valuable uniques. There's plenty of these early on during season start, and their value is also greatly affected by timeline. Early uniques can be valuable for a few worldstone shards like peasant crowns or anything with plus skills. Viper Magi is a huge early item for anyone that values cast rate and resistances. Harlequin Crest is an obvious huge item everyone values early, and plenty of other valuable build enabling uniques can be good too. How do you price them? Well, unfortunately, the value fluctuates and changes, and the best way to toss them in your stash and search them on the trade site to see what else people are pricing them for. Though there are usually some standards and it never hurts to ask. You could even jump in my chat and ask if you want. Set items are good too. The Natalia's set I imagine will be decently priced this season. Immortal Kings can be used on Act 5 mercenaries and always sought after early game for this reason. The Movina set is great for Cold Arrow Amazons early. The Griswold set for Paladins enables half their builds and is fantastic. The Necro Trangal set has also gotten its own buff this season and is fantastic. And even the Alder set is pretty solid, most notably the helmet with high summon rolls for early summon druids, which is a staple starter build of the class. If you're using a filter like Rise Shard, you'll get a very obvious signal when an extremely valuable, high exceptional item drops that's unique, and it'll tell you to pick it up. This is mostly for late game items, but it has a good system to keep your eye on these. There's also a lot of trial and error with this, and just learning what's valuable. Another general rule of thumb is amulets and rings are always good to check out when they drop, as even if they aren't some of the more valuable items, they can still be worth something, especially if we get into corruptions. Corruptions can take items that are worth very little or are hard to move and make them insanely valuable. Things like faster cast rate on amulets or rings as a corruption are worth a lot. Even +1 to all skills on chest, helm, weapon, or necklace corruption can turn a normal or mediocre unique that's only worth a few worldstone or nothing into something worth much more. I definitely suggest saving and utilizing worldstone shards, but if you're gambling mindset or you find yourself in an abundance of them and have moved on from using them as a primary currency, well, this is how you use them. Notable things I slammed last season was extra cast rate on occultist gloves or enhanced damage on a High Lord's Wrath. What you're looking for are essentially corruptions that just make the build using this item even better. Enhanced damage for physical builds, all resistances, things like this are good for everybody. Cannot be frozen is a huge one too, depending on where you slam it. Later in the game timeline, around 2 weeks or more is when corrupting becomes the norm. Most items that were valuable, especially uniques and sets, very early on have lost value due to the abundance of them in the market and the player base growing smaller over time, as any ARPG has. This means for items to have value, a good corruption is usually needed, so keep this in mind if you play long term. Hopefully all of this rambling and yapping that I've been doing about different ways to make money and different etiquette has been helpful to you if you're a newer player or even someone returning to the game after a long break, or someone who's never played Diablo 2 at all. I appreciate everyone who stopped by my stream while I've been playing Project Diablo 2 to give advice and talk and even ask questions about the game and my experience with it. Always feel free to hop on by and ask anything you're curious about, as I am somewhat knowledgeable, though not as much as a lot of the lifers that are playing. But I am willing to try to help in any way that I can. And thank you for watching. Anyway, I'm Sleepy Cat, and I'm tired. Good night.